The SEC Women's Basketball Tournament tipped off this morning here in Jacksonville, and tonight we are along with the conference commissioner, the coaches, the players, the fans, and the Jack Sports Council. We are celebrating in Hemming Park. Folks, this is a First Coast Sports Special, SEC Women's Basketball, and our show is rolling right now. For the entire week, Jacksonville FLA is home to the 2016 SEC Women's Basketball Tournament. Tonight, we're going one-on-one with the Commissioner, Greg Sankey, to talk women's hoops and some of the other hot-button topics surrounding the conference.
We want to make sure that little girls come to this game and see a young woman playing in a uniform and say, you know what, I want to be like her one day.
Jack Sports Council Executive Director Alan Verlander has the city in position to do just that. Find out what he's doing to make Jacksonville become the tourney's permanent home. Pat Summitt, the game changer, how she revolutionized the women's game, and the AD who put the legend in place to make it all happen. This is a First Coast Sports Special, the 2016 SEC Women's Basketball Tournament, live from downtown Jacksonville. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hemming Park. It is the site of the SEC Women's Basketball Fan Fest, and we've got so many fantastic festivities going on behind me. If you want to come out and shoot some free throws, jump shot, and three-pointers, we've got you here. You have 60 seconds to do it. You can also take a picture down in the photo booth, or you can go over and play a little basketball pong. But we're going to kick our show off with one of the best commissioners in the game, Greg Sankey. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sankey.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
Good to see you. So many hot-button topics that we want to talk about here in SEC country. First and foremost, could you please just give your thoughts on how the city has done as far as putting on a great show for this tournament thus far?
Yeah, so far so good. We had, I think, over about 1,500 young people, school children, at our games this afternoon. You know, Wednesday is a different day now that we're at 14 teams. And it was great to involve some young people in a different way. I was here in August speaking to the Jacksonville Sports Council. I think we had 800 people to come hear me speak, which surprises even my mother. But it was an opportunity for the enthusiasm to build. We obviously have a great bowl relationship. The Georgia-Florida, Florida-Georgia game, depending on which side you're on, builds momentum around the conference, and it's really good to be here. This has been a lot of time in the making.
Perfect segue. You know, this is, many people think that Jacksonville is so synonymous when you talk about Georgia-Florida, Florida-Georgia, however, depending on which team is the home team that year. The contract expires after this year. What has the city done along with the league to try and keep this game here in the River City?
Well, they're doing it right now, and I credit Alan Verlander and his staff. Again, you start in August. We're talking about women's basketball in the Southeastern Conference in Jacksonville in August. That's a good thing for us. We have an opportunity just coming up in a few years that's available. And we've never been to Jacksonville. First time we've had the women's basketball tournament for the Southeastern Conference in Florida. And literally what you see here around us, I think, is a part of the education, of the excitement that can be built here. And that will continue through the weekend.
Let's stick with college football if we can. You know, one of the things that have made a lot of people mad in these parts is Jim Harbaugh, Michigan head coach, decided to have a spring practice in SEC country. This week he's over in Bradenton, Florida. You have expressed your displeasures with it. What, if anything, can be done, and why don't you like the fact that they're practicing here in our state?
Yeah, well, the real issue is taking time back from student athletes. It's really their discretionary time. So if you examine what I talked about, that was really the focus. Michigan and Big Ten schools are going to recruit in Florida. Big 12 schools recruit in Florida. We've never once complained about that and would. That's part of the reality of college football recruiting. Our schools, by the way, recruit pretty successfully across the country on their own. We're the national champions. We won 8 bowl games and then 9th in the national championship game. So we don't have any fear, but we have spent a great deal of time in the NCAA talking about the time demands placed on young people. And it seems, with the backdrop of that conversation, that now was not the right time to take more away from student athletes. Hey, if young people want to volunteer to go do community service projects over spring break, we have teams that do that. That's great. But let's not put on the helmets and pads during a time when they can catch their breath. And that was really the essence of it. Hey, Jim's creative, good for him. We have innovators in our league, good for them. But it's really about the discussion taking place in intercollegiate athletics, which I think is really serious and a lot more important than just a spring practice type conversation.
All right, back to college basketball, women's college basketball. You happen to commission one of the best conferences in the country when it comes to women's hoops. What are you guys doing to continue to grow this sport?
Well, going to a new place for our women's basketball tournament this spring is a piece of that. When we've added 2 new schools, it's interesting. Texas A&M, not so far in their distant past, has won a national championship. And Missouri has built a program that's now nationally ranked, has our freshman of the year. And I think those are indications of how we continue to build. Dawn Staley and what she has done in Columbia, South Carolina, I think is remarkable. If you watch what happens maybe at the University of Kentucky, night in, night out with their women's basketball program. Their men's basketball program has this renown, but I watch on TV and Memorial Coliseum is regularly filled. The great tradition at Tennessee, Jimmy Dykes. At Arkansas, you know, we've added coaches, we've added the kind of practice facilities you'd expect at this level, and we have something called the SEC Network.
Yeah.
That has provided some exposure that wouldn't exist. We also experimented with whip-around coverage, which almost creates that NCAA tournament atmosphere because we don't have space to put every game on a Thursday night, so we feature snippets and people can go online and actually watch their home game in a very clear HD format on their iPad, their computer, or their phone.
All right. He's the commissioner of the SEC. He's Greg Sankey. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Great to be
Have
here.
a great time.
Great to be in Jacksonville. It's not snowing. It did that last year at our
Yes.
tournament, so there's nobody happier about that fact than myself.
Perfect night for a fan fest. All right, now the tournament tipped off this morning. We had some teams in action. Let's check out some of the early highlights. In the early game, you had, in fact, Alabama taking on LSU. Bama had it going early and took a 2-point lead in the half. But it was all Lady Tigers. LSU would go on to win 58-49. They'll play Kentucky on tomorrow. In the second game, who do we have? Vandy and Ole Miss. And let me tell you, the Commodores, they wasted no time getting after the Lady Rebels. When it was all said and done, Vandy thumped Ole Miss 74-59, and Vandy will get the 6th seed Georgia tomorrow night. Since 1980, the inception of the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament, the Sunshine State has never hosted the tournament. About 4 years ago, the folks here in Jacksonville realized there's a strong possibility that we could reel the tournament in. Courtney Jones went one-on-one with a man who was very instrumental in getting the SEC tournament here to the River City.
Chris, this is another one of those huge sporting events that the Jacksonville Sports Council went after and got it, partly because of its relationships in the Southeastern Conference. The other reason, the way in which the city embraces all types of sports.
Dad, I want to be like, so, I mean, that is really cool. And she got to touch them and shake hands with them.
Executive Director of the Jacksonville Sports Council, Alan Verlander, is the proud father of 4 girls who've played sports at one time or another. So he understands how impactful the SEC Women's Tournament could be on young girls who like to ball.
We want to make sure that little girls come to this game and see a young woman playing in a uniform and say, you know what, I want to be like her one day.
So how did the Jack Sports Council become dream creators?
We knew back in 2012 when I was starting at the city that this was coming up for bid. And
Verlander said once the Jacksonville Sports Council was created in March of 2014, the River City had a better chance of getting the tournament.
we submitted the bid officially in 2014. And got awarded pretty quickly. And so we've been planning for 2 years on this.
But the planning process revved up about a year ago.
Working with the arena staff, there's certain dates.
The SEC schools were briefed on what Jax has to offer.
And then it's just going through checklists.
From checking out the hotels in the area to transportation systems in place, the staff moved like a well-oiled machine.
I've run the last 3 NCAA tournaments, basketball tournaments that were here. So it's a very similar model. But this is our really first foray into women's sports on a high level. And if you look at a college event in the country in women's athletics, the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament is about as big as it gets.
The Jack Sports Council is looking to wow the SEC while they're here at Veterans Memorial Arena so that Jacksonville could be home to the SEC Women's Tournament for many years to come. Courtney Jones, Frisco Sports, NBC 12, ABC 25.
She always wanted to keep learning. She always wanted to get better. And so that made all of us that worked around her and with her want to get better also.
4 years removed from the game, Pat Summitt's impact on women's basketball continues. What it was like watching Summitt grow the sport from those closest to her. Former Georgia head coach Andy Landers is one of the best college coaches in the country. A look back at his legendary career and a peek at some of the other SEC legends being honored this week. You're watching the 2016 SEC Women's Basketball Tournament Special live from downtown Jacksonville. We are in Hemming Park, folks, where you're seeing the basketball pong going down. The kids, they like this spot. If you want to, come on down. We're having a good old time. We're back after this timeout. Did you know last Monday marked the first time in 31 years that the University of Tennessee was not listed in the Associated Press Women's Top 25 Basketball Poll? The Lady Vols went an incredible 565 consecutive weeks in the top 25. They were ranked number 1 103 times, in the top 5 407 times, and in the top 10 506 of those 565 weeks. Their amazing streak started back on February 17, 1985. Welcome back live to Hemming Plaza SEC Fan Fest going down. As you know, the 2016 SEC Women's Basketball Tournament is in full effect, and we are having a fantastic time. Over the years, women's basketball has grown leaps and bounds, and one of the most influential women in that process was former Tennessee head coach Pat Summitt. The legendary coach worked really hard to grow the game. Courtney Lyle is in Knoxville, and she sat down with the athletic director who gave Pat Summitt the job at Tennessee to explain what Summitt did to really grow the sport.
When you walk into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in Knoxville, Tennessee, you enter the Pat Summitt Rotunda. She's one of 145 inductees who played a major role in making the game what it is today.
Pat Summitt was a great coach because she was a great teacher.
In Joan Cronin's book, Sport is Life with the Volume Turned Up, there's a chapter just called Pat.
She was a teacher with passion, and her basketball court was her classroom.
Summitt made Tennessee women's basketball a national name, and as the women's athletic director at UT, Joan was there to help her make it happen.
Anything we did, one of the first questions she asked is it good for the game? We were getting started with television. We played back-to-back nights. We played double headers. She wanted to do everything you could do to promote the game, even more sometimes than herself, and of course the University of Tennessee.
I put you three inside, bottom movement, and get on the offensive board. Now let's go.
When she was coming along, women's sports, you know, they weren't maybe given the same opportunities as men's sports. How difficult was doing what she did?
It was, you know, she was a trailblazer. She was a pioneer, but more than that, she was a leader. And what people wanted to do was follow her. I mean, I can remember when we'd get excited when we had 3 games on television. Now, if there's one of our games not on television, I get calls and say, why aren't the Lady Vols on television tonight? We expect so much, but we expect it because the path that Pat Summitt laid for us was incredible.
Summitt was the first coach, men's or women's, to reach 1,000 wins. She's impacted the lives of hundreds of young women, many who will be coaching in the SEC tournament this year.
When you think about people that are successful, you have to have pride, you have to have passion, and you have to surround yourself with the right people. And that's what Pat Summitt did her whole career.
In Knoxville, Courtney Lyle, First Coast Sports.
Thank you, Courtney. And I'm joined now by Florida Gators head coach Amanda Butler. She played against Pat Summitt. She was the coach at Tennessee. She coached against Pat Summitt. Coach, first, thank you so much for joining us. Could you please tell us the impact Summitt had on you both, or has had, both professionally and personally?
You know, that's not a short answer, Chris. You know, she's just an amazing pioneer for our game, and for someone who's in my age group, who I grew up in Tennessee. So you grow up playing basketball, and especially if you're a little girl, that's the standard, is Tennessee and Pat Summitt. And then, you know, to continue on as a collegiate athlete, have a chance to compete against her, and then to pursue a career in coaching. You just see her fingerprints all over the game, over all different aspects, the way that the game has grown from TV exposure, the competitive level, the amount of just everyone knowing who she is. There's just so much impact that it's hard just to really capture it in a short amount of time.
All right, your team will be in action on Friday. You don't know who you'll face. You'll face the winner of LSU or Kentucky, one of the two on Friday night. Could you just talk about how your team is, how do you feel about them going into the tournament on Friday?
Well, we feel great. You know, being able to finish as a top 4 seed in this league with the amount of competitiveness and parity. We've got multiple NCAA tournament teams in this league, multiple top 25 teams in this league. To be able to finish in the top 4, receive the double bye, and be able to continue our season with that level of confidence, I think is really important for us. But we've got a lot of basketball left to play. We've got a lot of tough challenges ahead of us.
Coach, it was so good being with you tonight. Good luck in the tournament on Friday night. Amanda Butler, head coach of the Florida Lady Gators. They're 22-7 as they head into the tournament. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Knoxville, Tennessee is home to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. We're live in Rocky Top with your VIP pass inside. But first, honoring SEC legends. Andy Landers led the Georgia Lady Hoop Dogs for more than 3 decades. A look at his impressive credentials, plus a quick peek at the other SEC greats being honored this week. You're watching the 2016 SEC Women's Basketball Tournament Special live from downtown Jacksonville. Hemming Plaza, Park that is the place to be tonight. SEC Fan Fest. You think you got a jump shot? Come down here and show us you got game. The SEC Women's Legends Class of 2016 has been announced and will be honored all week at the tournament. Headlining the class is one of the best coaches in the history of SEC women's basketball, Andy Landers. Landers led the Lady Hoop Dogs for 36 years. During his tenure in Athens, Georgia made 31 NCAA tournament appearances, including 20 Sweet 16s, 11 Elite 8s, and 5 Final Fours. Landers won a remarkable 944 games during his career as a college coach, a total that ranks 5th all-time in women's college basketball history. We're live in Hemming Park, downtown Jacksonville, the place to be. Jump ball, get it. SEC Women's Basketball Tournament going down. Now inside the library, the public library that is, they are honoring SEC legends. So a lot of good stuff going on. Now while we are home to the tourney, Knoxville, Tennessee is home to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. And for your VIP pass, we go live to Rocky Top to Nick Carboni with that part of the story. Hello, Nick.
Hey Chris, yeah, a little chillier up here tonight, envy you down there. But one of the best events we have every year here in Knoxville, Tennessee is the induction ceremony for the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. You get to see the emotion as these 6 inductees every year complete their basketball journeys being enshrined in the building behind me. And speaking of the building behind me, when you talk about it, you have to start with what's on top.
It boasts the biggest basketball in the world, 30 feet wide and 20,000 pounds. And it's exactly to scale, too, with 96,000 of those little pebbles, the same number as you'd get on a regulation-size ball.
We are the only museum in the world dedicated to all levels of women's basketball.
The Women's Basketball Hall of Fame was created in order to honor the past, celebrate the present, and promote the future of the sport.
Just last year, we just did a big technology piece, so we've updated 90% of our exhibits with new LED touch screens, a lot of interactives.
Fittingly, the hall resides just minutes from the home of the Tennessee Lady Volunteers, and their legendary coach was instrumental in getting the hall built.
Originally, it was supposed to be in Jackson, Tennessee. They couldn't raise the funds to get the hall built there in Jackson, so Pat Summitt kind of spearheaded the effort, raised over about $8 million.
Inside, the hall pays tribute to pioneers of the sport and celebrates the game's latest standouts. Game-worn jerseys from the Final Four, All-Americans at every level, and even a tribute to last year's state champions.
Just to see their schools and the different divisions and the winners and stuff like that, it draws everybody in.
Since its first class in 1999, the hall has honored nearly 150 inductees, from well-known coaches and players to high school heroes.
And it's just a great way to honor the individuals that have kind of paved the way for women's basketball and gotten it to what it is today.
And for many of the faces on these walls, the Hall of Fame represents how far the sport has come from its days rooted in inequality.
To hear what they went through and to get the game to what it is today, it's really inspiring.
Meanwhile, it has been a rough year for those legendary Lady Vols. They are out of the AP poll for the first time in 31 years. They have lost 12 games. That's the most in program history, and they enter the SEC tournament as a 7 seed, Chris. That's the lowest seed Tennessee women's basketball has ever held in that event. Back to you.
All right, guys, thank you, Nick. We hope you're enjoying the show, because guess what? We've got much, much more. This is Fan Fest. It's in Hemming Park. And just in case you didn't know, you're in Jacksonville, FLA. We're back after this timeout. All this week, the SEC will be honoring its 2016 conference legends. Here's a look at the legends scheduled to be honored. Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain to you why having the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament in the River City is really, really big. According to officials, this tournament over the course of this week will bring the city between $7 and $10 million. Million. No, I did not stutter. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. Be sure to join me tonight at 11 o'clock. Again, we'll have much, much more from the tourney. Thanks for watching. Good night, everybody.